video ay pupunta tayo sa Argao, which is doon natin ma-discover ang historical place which is my birthplace in Argao.
Hold up.
Buenos dias, buenas tardes, señora, señor. For today's video, we will learn a lot about my selected historical place, events, and things in the Philippines, which is in my birthplace, in Argao. For today's video, it is described as one of the most interesting towns in the Cebu Province for its public stone buildings roofed with tiles and its heavily walled and fortified plaza complex. Located along the shoreline by the slope of various mountains is the town of Argao. This was formerly known as Sali Argao, as towering tree which used to grow abundantly in these mountains. Argao is considered as one of the most interesting towns of Cebu Province for its public stone buildings roofed with tiles and ovens used for the making of the bricks and tiles. Argao's heavily walled and fortified plaza complex is the most exemplary remaining example of a Spanish colonial pueblo built. It took more than 200 years after Argao's initial foundation of the intended design to materialize. Many of these Argao-made bricks and tiles found their way to Cebu City, where they were used in elite houses. Argao is one of the towns that still manages to keep alive their old Spanish flavor. This is evident not only in the old church but also in the venerable houses made of tisa, in the fervor of the observance of religious traditions, and in the old world taste of its torta.
Argao's first titular patron was San Miguel Arcangel, later changed to Nuestra Señora de la Consolación, and later back to San Miguel Arcangel. The construction of the church probably began in 1734 or soon after. The edifice was most likely seized by pirates.
The construction of this church, which started in 1782, is attributed to Father Francisco Espina, parish priest from 1778 to 1798. The first completion of the construction of the church was in 1788. In 1830, a slender 5-story belfry, described as one of the best in the Philippines, was constructed by Bishop Santos Gomez Marañon. It has 8 bells and a clock. The roof of the convent and church fell down during the typhoon of November 25 to 26, 1876. Argao has benefited greatly to the zeal and unselfish dedication of Father Mateo Perez, an Augustinian priest who served the town for 33 uninterrupted years, 1803 to 1836. He completed the church, built the convent, constructed schools, and built a spacious house, or the former palacio, where spiritual exercises are held every year under his direct supervision. Father Perez also rebuilt the town, planned solid stone houses along the straight and well-drawn streets, introduced the cultivation of the salt and tobacco, coffee and cocoa, the fabrication of bricks, and the weaving industry, introduced people in arts and industry on notice, and succeeded in making Argao most religious, industrious, and rich town of Cebu. In this church, historians and architects find overwhelming variety of masonry of high artistic quality and great symbolic meaningfulness, which we didn't find in other church in Cebu to the similar extent. Argaoanans called their Spanish colonial church and plaza complex the cabecera. The early missionaries' main objective was still clear, where settlements had to be founded which enabled priests to reach out to the scattered indigenous population for the purpose of assimilating them to this Catholic religion and culture. These settlements were called the Reducciones. The walled cabecera of Argao, where it stands today, was essentially rebuilt by Father Mateo Diaz during his tenure from 1803 and 1836. Around the church, which has previously been constructed in the 1780s, Father Perez materialized the concept of a defense structure against the perennial pirate attacks. A solid rectangular fortification wall surrounded the church and rectory. The Casa Real and the Palacio, integrated into fortification perimeter, were 4 gates on each side and watchtower by the seashore and 1 inland. A massive cuartel and a stone-built montuario beside the Puerta Marina. The fortified reduction of Argao provided temporary shelter in times of immediate danger. The walled cabecera of Argao, its formal architectural coherence and completeness, is an excellent example of a Spanish colonial reduction in Cebu and a unique historical landmark of outstanding unity.
Ergot Church exemplifies to introduce Rococo elements in blending with Baroque style. The facade is of a very simple rectangular form divided into 3 levels and 3 segments. The semicircular arched main entrance is flanked by paired columns mounted on rectangular pedestals decorated with spread eagles and crowned Corinthian capitals, with floral motifs falling down to half of its shaft. A small rectangular relief on top of the main door by the cornice represents the Augustinian symbol, flanked by 2 floral motifs and a window with balustrade crowned by a small statue of San Miguel Arcangel.
Argao's pipe organ, one of 14 Spanish-era instruments and one of 3 in Cebu, was built sometime half of the 19th century. This pipe organ stands 15 feet tall, and its case had similarities with that of San Agustin in Manila. It has 700 pipes varying in size from small as a finger to as tall as 8 feet and capable of 22 different kinds of sounds.
Few in Cebu and Bohol, which have the privilege of having been decorated with some of Raimundo Francia's masterpieces. He was one of Cebu's famous painters in the early 20th century and was called the Michelangelo of Cebu. Francia was commissioned by Father Joaquin Boiser to do the frescoes on the vaulted ceiling of the church. The most prominent theme on the ceiling is the Battle of the Angels. The titular patron of Argao, Saint Michael the Archangel, is not a saint, but rather he's an angel. He's the leader of all angels and the army of God. This is what the title Archangel means, that he is above all the others in rank. He has 4 main responsibilities, as we know from scriptures and Christian tradition. First is to combat Satan. Second is to escort the faithful to heaven at the hour of death. Third is to be a champion of all Christians and the church itself. And fourth is to call men from life on earth to their heavenly judgment.
Argao San Miguel Arcangel Parish is truly the one of the most beautiful Augustinian-built churches in the Philippines. And not just that, the town itself is rich with stories worth to be known. If you want to visit this beautiful place of Argao, please refer to the description box below.